Hello, I'm going to show you the 3 common mistakes people make when building GA4 session tables and working with sessions from the GA4 BigQuery export. This is an example of an output table that we make from our pipeline tool, and I'm going to show you the sort of mistakes people make when trying to create this to use in their reporting. So this is the raw data that GA4 BigQuery gives us, and to begin with, it just likes a big raw event stream. The way that we identify the individual events within this is using the session ID parameter within event params. The first mistake people make is event params is the single largest column within GA4 BigQuery. BigQuery charges you basically on the size of the columns that you access. So if you are just copying and pasting queries in because you've Googled GA4 Query Builder, this is going to be the single most expensive way to do this. It's hard to maintain and it's expensive. You just don't want to do this. What you instead want to do is use a pipelining tool, something like dbt, something like Dataform. As mentioned, we have our own paid version if you'd like to use that. But some sort of pipelining tool to only do this once. You pull this into its own column, and then in the future, you build all the tables based once you have extracted that column. You're no longer touching this every time. So that's the first mistake. What's the second mistake? The second mistake is that when you use this to group together, you're pulling out the session ID and you're going to say, let's just run a group by on these dimensions, right? The problem is these dimensions are not always consistent across a session. Take, for example, source. It starts off as Google for the first page view. The second page view has no referrer, so source becomes null. This means if you just run a group by based on GA session ID, you're going to get 2 rows per session. One for this first source and one for the second source of null. That means we've double counted our sessions when we roll everything up. Instead, what you want to use is you want to use a window function. We're going to make a session window where we group by the session ID, we're going to order by the event timestamp, and then what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to pop in here and we're going to be able to use the function first value that then will be available to us. So we can do first value on source, and this will then give us the first one, which is just Google, and now when we run our group by, we will get 1 row per session and we'll correctly have that set up. The third and final thing that people need to account for is you need to account for essentially incremental builds. Session tables, and GA4 BigQuery data in general gets quite large. You do not want to be reprocessing every day, every single time you look at your report, because a lot of these days don't change. Once we're on the 21st, this data has already been locked in. We don't want to come back and reprocess all this data when we come to reprocess this row. So we want to build our tables incrementally. When you're building that, the big problem with sessions is that sessions can change over days. If you imagine that this is our midnight boundary, we might have events either side of midnight. What this means is that you will double count the session. If you build the 5th, and this is the session that begins before midnight, and then on the 6th, you have the session that continues after midnight, it will be counted once on each day. You've double counted your session. To avoid this, what you need to do is you need to look through and not process the sessions from the day beforehand in order to avoid that double counting. So yes, those are the common mistakes that you have setting it up. If you would like any help with this, please check out our pipeline product. But otherwise, I can heartily recommend things like dbt or Dataform.